showing the vast city of Ebelstein. The story begins. Liar and old man, that's what they call the gentleman showing off his magic light on the street. Known only as a decadent old man by the slum dwellers, he could only use one-star magic. But with a giant ego, the old man proclaimed himself a great mage and lost his temper with any child who played pranks on him. Watching from afar, our white-haired boy paid attention to the gentleman's behavior. Determined to learn magic, the young protagonist chose that grumpy man as his master. Sitting around the campfire, there was no grand reason for this unlikely alliance. Needing followers, the old man simply accepted the boy by his side. Thirsty for knowledge, the kid took the opportunity during the harsh winter. As the seasons passed, the training continued steadily until spring. Far from the city in the open field, the young man focused his energy under his master's watchful eye. Suddenly, an intense blue aura begins to emanate from the boy's hands. Shocked by the scene, the old man wonders if the kid finally mastered the mana flow. With eyes glowing with power, our protagonist focuses all his vital strength. In a swift shot, he releases an impressive magical energy blast forward. Like lightning, the blue mana arrow flies straight to the target. With a violent impact, the magic hits the tree trunk dead center and destroys the wood. Impressed with the damage, the old man closely analyzes the hole made by the apprentice. After spending a whole year beside the grumpy master, the intense training was bearing fruit. Even doing all sorts of boring tasks, our boy finally became a one-star mage. With his face flushed from drinking, the gentleman tells that beyond the wall, nobles reach 3 stars early. Throwing a piece of hard bread to the protagonist, he warns that a commoner would never get that far. In complete silence, the young man listens to the master's speech that magic is defined only by lineage. Repeating this idea of the insurmountable wall between nobles and commoners, the old man reflected his own frustration. During that night, the atmosphere seemed strange and the hours dragged on. The very next day, under heavy rain, the protagonist returns to the hideout. Paralyzed in the middle of the storm, he finds the old man lying on the ground completely lifeless. Covered in bruises, the body showed the gentleman had suffered a brutal lesson. Believing the master picked a fight on the street, the boy tries to understand the tragic situation. But later the truth comes out, revealing the old man was eliminated by the guards. Before a makeshift grave, the young man discovers the master tried to take a spell book from a warehouse. Completely misunderstanding, no one knew why the grumpy old man risked his life for that, until a blue system screen appears out of nowhere in front of the boy, shining brightly. With the memory of the old man preaching about nobility, our protagonist faces the floating window. Through a system message, the screen asks him to choose a magic school since he is not from this world. 4 years fly by after this life-changing event for the kid. Then the beautiful Keisha Flameheart appears in the story, making her presence felt. Former lady of a fallen noble house, she is a highly coveted 3-star mage among mercenaries. Due to some contracts in Ebelstein, she ends up meeting our boy at the local guild. Studying together, the protagonist starts learning advanced spells with a talented mage. Inside the Beldenstier Tavern, the two chat peacefully at a table. Straight to the point, Keisha says it's natural to want to evolve and praises Derek's talent for magic. But right after, she warns that excessive greed will only delay his progress. Loyal to his master, the boy promises to keep the advice well and not rush things. Ready for practice, Keisha tells Derek to close his eyes and feel the mana flow. Fully concentrated, Derek tries to bring his imagination to reality with his own mana. With total calm, the young man creates a bright blue aura outlining his body. Surprised by the result, Keisha notes that the boy's mana control is absurdly stable. Glowing with power, the protagonist shows that field experience made a big difference. However, a violent noise from outside the tavern cuts the training in half. Seized by panic, the mercenaries shout confusedly, wanting to know the origin of the explosion. Startled by the noise, Derek thinks they are under attack and gets up quickly. In a quick reflex, Keisha grabs the boy's wrist, preventing an immediate exit. In an authoritative tone, the mage pulls the apprentice to follow her without asking questions. Outside, the guards and mercenaries pull their weapons, looking for the culprit of the blast. Through the dark alleys of the city, the duo sneaks away from the confusion. Confused by the escape, the young man asks why they are running stealthily. Facing the student, Keisha asks Derek to listen to her next words very carefully. Totally focused, the boy nods, agreeing to listen to the explanation. With a serious look, the mage explains that nobles are completely possessive of their magical privileges. Not mincing words, Keisha says innate strength is only a blessing for nobles, as commoners rarely evolve. With her hand on the boy's shoulder, she reveals that huge noise was not an enemy attack. Caught red-handed, the protagonist admits he used an illusion spell, becoming a rank 2 mage at 14. On the system screen, the blue message confirms the unlocking of auditory hallucination for the boy. Together on the road, the mage starts teaching new spells and even vital rules of high society. After another year of much adventure, it's time for Keisha to leave in a luxurious carriage. Hired as a tutor by the powerful Elvester house, she was going to work for a family feared even by the Grand Duke. Faced with an unrefusable offer like that, the mage couldn't let the golden chance slip away. With a gentle smile, she says goodbye, leaving a valuable spellbook as a gift for Derek. Immediately, the system updates and shows our protagonist growing arsenal in a list. At dawn, the boy spends another whole year studying the book on his own and training hard. At only 16, he already masters 2 powerful new spells with total mastery. With no intention of stopping his evolution, the young man hears a mercenary shout in the tavern. Sitting at the wooden counter, Derek asks curiously what this supposed special contract is about. Excited about the reward, the man reveals it's a direct request from the Grand Duchy that could change their destiny. Surprised by the name, our protagonist questions if it's really the famous Duplain family. Annoyed by the boy's slowness, the mercenary leader warns that this family spends gold like water. With a strong pull on the kid's cloak, the boss explains this job could open doors in the future. Curious about the mission, the young man asks exactly what service the rich guys want. Straight to the point, the big guy answers it's just hunting some beasts on the border, leaving the boy suspicious. With a flea behind his ear, our protagonist finds it very strange for such a powerful family to hire simple mercenaries. Rejecting the offer right away, he turns his back and tells the boss to find someone else. Serious and unyielding, the kid reminds him he doesn't get involved in suspicious jobs at all. Desperate, the mercenary shouts that the nobles demanded a mage and people with that skill are rare. Thoughtful, the boy questions the real reason for needing magic just to defeat common beasts. To catch the young man's attention, the man raises his tightly closed hand. Upon opening his palm, the leader shows a gold coin and reveals it's just the advance payment. Completely shocked by the money, our boy stares at the shiny coin in silence. Watching the scene from afar, a gentleman with a monocle and two women analyze the white-haired mage. When introducing the clients, the mercenary demands respect, but the noble gentleman rejects the greeting immediately. Disappointed with the boy's age, the old man complains about them sending a child for the job. Trying to save the contract, the boss guarantees firmly that the kid is the guild's best mage. Having no patience for excuses, the client turns his back and decides to leave, refusing the partnership. Realizing they were going to lose the big payout, the protagonist finally decides to intervene in the conversation. With a sharp look, he catches the noble's attention and proposes a serious talk to prove his worth. Already in the lands of the Grand Duchy of Duplain, the peaceful scenery hides the contract's true danger. In a swift attack, a goblin is thrown far away after being hit by a blue magic blade. Moving like lightning, the young man clears out the green creatures without hesitation. Cold as ice, our hero doesn't even blink while the monsters roar in anger towards him. With a precise sword strike, he finishes another enemy without the slightest difficulty. Surrounded by defeated beasts, the boy proves in practice that size and age do not define strength. Releasing a blast of pure mana, he disintegrates the last target with overwhelming power. Wiping off sweat, the mage tells the old man the extermination job is already done. Completely in shock at the speed of the hunt, the noble can barely formulate a sentence. Hidden under the hood, the mysterious young woman smiles, impressed by our protagonist's absurd talent. Back at the tavern, the quiet mood would soon be broken by the mercenary's gossip. Furious about the situation, the blonde mercenary accuses the boy of becoming a noble's lapdog. Shouting, she says commoners shouldn't throw their pride in the trash, crawling to the elite. Blinded by anger, the girl demands to know what miserable amount they offered for the mission. Provoking his colleague, the leader suggests the payment was just a measly silver coin. With a smug smile on his face, the mercenary boss builds an annoying suspense on purpose. Revealing the real prize of a gold coin, the blonde changes expression immediately, her eyes shining. Ready to sell her own pride in the blink of an eye, the girl begs to crawl for the nobles too. Slumped on the table after being scolded, she asks curiously what it was like facing the rich guy's mission. Relaxed with his drink, our protagonist reports it was just a basic goblin extermination with no challenge. Focused on the details, the young man silently reflects that the three clients were hiding their identities. Noticing the mage's suspicion, the mercenary keeps drinking and celebrating the easy profit. With a sharp mind, Derek deduces the supposed officer didn't have the physical profile for that military rank. Attentive to the smallest signs, he noticed the woman's hands, who claimed to be a cleaner, were too soft. Intrigued by the group, the boy focuses his suspicion on the third mysterious hooded figure. Straight up, the boss warns that mercenaries only take the money and never investigate clients' lives. Even reluctantly, the protagonist decides to put his suspicions aside and focus only on the job. Supporting the idea, the other colleague reinforces that in the real world's jungle, the only rule is to survive and profit. After the night passes, the day dawns sunny in the vast lands of the Duplain Duchy. Facing the cleared battlefield, the old noble verifies the green pest was totally eliminated. Satisfied with the results, he praises the service and prepares to settle the pending debt. In a quick motion, a shiny coin flies through the air towards the mercenary's hands. Full of joy, the big guy grabs the kid's head upon seeing they received 2 solid gold pieces. Drawing attention to himself, the gentleman with the monocle makes sure to praise the boy's raw talent. Wasting no time, the old man proposes a new exclusive contract just for the white-haired mage. Shocked by the sudden proposal, the 2 mercenaries freeze, not understanding what is happening. Dropping the bomb, the noble offers the absurd amount of 15 gold coins and almost gives the boss a heart attack. Staring intently at the boy, the man waits for confirmation to seal the millionaire deal. Firm in his decision, our protagonist accepts the job without the slightest hesitation in his eyes. Already on the way to the new destination, the fancy carriage cuts through the roads toward unknown territory. Face to face with the family's true base, the duo admires the colossal mansion exuding wealth. Amazed by the size of the place, the mercenary leader is left open, mouthed by the nobility's luxury. About to enter the house, the old man decides to finally reveal his true identity to the visitors. Taking off the officer mask, he introduces himself as Delon, the Grand Duke's own head butler. Completely panicking at the client's extremely high rank, the boss begins to cold sweat from nerves. On the same wave of revelations, the supposed cleaner announces she is actually the mansion's head housekeeper. Trembling, the mercenary leader tries to bow and show respect to the place's big shots. Cold and calculating, our boy just mentally confirms the suspicions about the disguises were right. Tired of hiding, the third mysterious figure of the mission steps forward with firm steps. Curious about the girl, the two stare at the last piece of that noble group's puzzle. In a smooth motion, she removes the cloak, revealing long dark hair and a delicate face. Introducing herself as Aisline, the eldest daughter of the house, she offers the position of magic tutor for her youngest sister. Caught completely by surprise, the mage widens his eyes, realizing he's going to teach a pure blood noble. Under the clear sky, the sumptuous mansion will now be the new field of challenges for the slum kid. As the giant doors open, our protagonist's destiny drastically changes forever. Inside the luxurious office, the situation balls between the Grand Duke and his son Reg. With a firm voice, the family leader demands the young man behave with dignity. Indignant with the scolding, Reg points his finger and accuses his sister Diella of being the real shameless one for attacking the maids. Interrupting the argument, Aisline asks her brother to lower his voice in front of their father. Full of anger, the young man reveals more than 10 servants resigned last month because of the girl's outbursts. Not mincing words, he questions how long the father will turn a blind eye to this delinquent. Tired of hearing insults, the Grand Duke shouts his son's name, making the walls shake. In an attempt to calm things down, Aisline tells her brother to stop the show and leave the room. Upset with the situation, Ray grits his teeth, trying to contain his own fury. Appealing to logic, the young man insists that even with Diella being useless, the family still has Aisline to shine. Unscrupulously, he suggests it's past time to discard the problematic sister once and for all. With a cutting look, the father warns that this decision is not up to his simple hair to make. Ignoring the warning, Reg proposes throwing the girl into a monastery to live praying instead of being a burden at home. In the blink of an eye, the Grand Duke grabs his son's head with monstrous force. Slamming the young man's face straight onto the wooden desk, the old man shows who is really in charge. With eyes glowing in fury, the leader warns once again that the girl's destiny is his business. With a bruised face, Reg grumbles that sooner or later the father will have to make a choice. Far from the commotion, our protagonist walks through the fancy corridors next to Aisline. Straight to the point, he asks if the girl has heard the terrible rumors about Diella. Sincere in her response, the noble confirms that her younger sister's reputation is kept a secret from the public. Open the double office doors, the duo encounters the tragic end of the family fight. Startled by the scene, Aisline immediately calls for her father upon seeing her injured brother. Masking the tension, she tries to break the ice by asking how the trip to Ebelstein went. In a polite tone, the young woman thanks him for all the care she received during her stay away from home. Noticing the injury on Reg's face, she suggests they talk to each other at a calmer time. Observing the mess on the floor, Derek notices the maid cleaning it up in total silence. Relieved by his daughter's return, the old noble states he is happy to see her safe. Right after, the girl introduces the white-haired youth as the new magic tutor she brought from afar. With an analytical look, the Grand Duke looks the kid up and down, murmuring a soft sigh. Saying a polite goodbye, the noble pulls her injured brother out of the room, leaving the mage alone with the boss. Before the boy leaves, the Grand Duke tells him to stand still and wait a bit longer. Focused on his papers, the old man continues writing with his quill without showing any rush. Starting a conversation, the noble comments that the new teacher is only 16 years old. Sitting on the couch with total tranquility, the protagonist confirms the info without hesitation. Curious about the young man's level, the father asks how far his skill with spells goes. Lying to his face, Derek answers he can only use basic 1-star magic. With a deep laugh, the family leader laughs at the kid's audacity in trying to hide his game. Serious again, he warns the boy has no reason to lie and that false modesty isn't always a virtue. In absolute silence, our hero just stares at the most powerful man in the region. Suddenly, an overwhelming blue aura explodes from the old man's body, revealing his 5-star level. Faced with such power, the protagonist apologizes for the lie and acknowledges the client's absurd strength. Softening the pressure, the noble says he understands the reason for the disguise, as too much talent can become a curse. Evaluating the young man's clothes, he notes Derek lacks the classic profile of an elite teacher. Unafraid of reprisals, the kid confesses he is actually just a hired mercenary. Respecting Aisline's choice, the father decides to ask no more questions and grants access to the problematic daughter's annex. With permission granted, the old man tells the maid to guide the boy to the youngest's quarters. Before turning his back, Derek raises his hand and asks to make a special request to the Duke. Cold and professional, the mage warns he will take the mission seriously until Diella learns true magic. But for that to happen, he demands to enter high society by acting like a high-level noble. Confused by the proposal, the leader questions why the boy would ask for something so obvious for the role. With a determined look, our hero claims he has a very sincere request to make to the boss. Totally intrigued, the old noble stares at the kid, trying to understand the plan behind those words. Far away from there, a porcelain plate flies with brutal force across a mansion bedroom. Breaking into 1,000 pieces against the wall, the dish scares the young maid who screams in terror. Kneeling on the floor, the servant cries and begs for the feared Yahello's forgiveness after making a silly mistake. Without a drop of empathy, the noble girl humiliates the maid, saying apologies don't change her trash status. Shouting, the little villain orders the maid out of her sight before she gets another silverware to the face. Meanwhile, in the tea room, the mercenary boss asks Aisline why she chose Derek of all people. Worried about the kid, the big guy warns a commoner will suffer in the clutches of fussy nobility. Knowing everything, the young woman explains she tried to hire the best masters on the continent, but they all ran away from her sister. Out of noble options, Aisline decided to bet on a boy desperate for money and with rare skills. Drinking his tea, the mercenary finds it strange, because Derek knows etiquette well despite coming from the slums. Believing in the young man's goodness, the woman confesses she found the kid refined and gentle enough to tame Yahello. Laughing at the noble's innocence, the mercenary boss suggests she needs to greatly improve her radar for people. With a dark smile, he recounts that Derek is a child of the streets and did everything to survive in a dog-eat-dog world. Through the luxurious corridors, the young mage is already walking toward the beast's lair. Standing in front of the double doors, he mentally prepares for the first encounter with the student. Knocking lightly on the wood, he announces his arrival with politeness and coldness. Opening the door, the protagonist steps into the luxurious room, greeting the noble girl. Focused on the mission, he introduces himself formally as Derek, asking for a moment of her attention. Sitting with a mischievous smile, Yahello tells the teacher to come a little closer. Unsuspecting, the boy obeys and walks towards the Duplain house's second daughter. In a fraction of a second, a bucket full of dirty water is thrown right in the mage's face. Bursting into laughter, the girl mocks him, saying she thought a sewer rat had invaded the room. But upon wiping the water from his face, the boy's red eyes glow with a deadly fury, silencing the girl instantly. Mad about the offense, our spoiled girl grumbles about the boy's audacity. Kneeling on the floor, the young tutor wipes the dirt off his own face. Full of disgust, the blonde mutters a curse under her breath. Holding her nose, the girl complains about the mercenary's smell. In a swift motion, the young man stands up and faces the rebellious student. Showing her bare foot proudly, the young woman demands the sewer rat know his place. Back in the mansion's fancy office, the mood is pure negotiation. Turned to the window, the wealthy old man listens carefully to the conversation. Sitting with a boss-like posture, Derek warns that problem with the youngest is a tough nut to crack. Straight to the point, the kid asks what the limit of his authority as a teacher is. Intrigued by the commoner's courage, the noble evaluates the absurd request. Returning to the bedroom, the scene shifts back to the girl red with fury. Fallen on her bottom on the floor, the spoiled girl feels the impact of the first retaliation. With a menacing look, the mage approaches slowly through the dark room. Completely in shock, the prisoner realizes she picked a fight with the wrong person. Called as Winter, Derek orders the useless student to get off the floor immediately. In the blink of an eye, a memory travels 3 years in the past during a carriage ride. Sitting near his former master, the apprentice asks how to tame stubborn students. Thoughtful about the question, Keisha says she would try to understand the student's flaws with affection. Skeptical of the method, the boy shoots back asking what to do if kindness is useless. In a very didactic way, the mage explains that empathy fails and requires a fresh start. With a member smile on her face, she suggests carving pure fear into the poor soul's mind. Back in the present, our hero warns he only offers respect to those who deserve it. Furious, the girl tries to slap the tutor's face but takes a firm block. Shouting, the little blonde yells how a dirty commoner dares hold nobility's hand. Having no patience for a show, Derek turns the tables and delivers a heavy slap right to the noble's face. Totally merciless, the kid makes it clear he doesn't repeat his rules twice for anyone. With her hand on her burning cheek, Yahello freezes, unable to believe the violent punishment. At that exact moment, the old butler pops up at the door, screaming desperately at the aggression. Surrounded by fearful maids, the staff member runs to aid the girl lying on the floor. Desperate about the scandal, the butler accuses the tutor of signing his own death sentence. Without showing an ounce of remorse, the mercenary pulls a rolled parchment from his clothes. With the paper in hand, he proves the patriarch gave him carte blanche for any harsh method. Terrified upon reading the words, the old servant freezes before the boss's official seal. Cowering in the dark corner, the girl realizes no one in the mansion can save her now. Under the moonlight, gossip about the beating quickly reaches the family's main hall. In an attempt to avoid a tragedy, a dark-haired young man restrains another relative's fury. With a massive kick, the blonde knight rips the annex door off its hinges, fuming with pure hatred. Sitting casually in the armchair, our protagonist faces his rivals with crossed arms. Ready to slice the commoner's throat, Valerian charges in, wanting to avenge the slap on the youngest. With a firm grip on the enemy's collar, Derek warns again that their father approved the harsh lesson. Acting in the blink of an eye, the dark-haired youth pulls his brother back and reminds him the mage is a guest of honor. Shifting the blame to the brawling brother, the peaceful noble avoids a massacre right there. In the corridors of the big house, the dark-haired one confesses the girl deserved such a lesson a long time ago. Indignant with the theater, he grumbles, not understanding why Valerian protects the weirdo so much. Through a sad flashback, we see little Yahello smiling in a sunny corner. Opening the doorknob, the blonde brother drags our hero into an empty room. With a choked voice, the knight explains that was the girl's corner before she lost her mind. With alert eyes, Derek notices several unfinished paintings scattered in the corners of the wall. Full of longing in his heart, Valerian remembers his sister looked adorable showing her sketches. However, reality shows the little girl abandoned the canvases halfway to do easy things. In a shock of humility, the blonde holds back tears and apologizes for the cowardly attack earlier. Fine with the truce, the mercenary forgives the little show but finds the makeshift museum in the dark weird. Focused on saving his sister, the young man vents that the girl lost her mind due to the pressure of lineages. Finding no clear reason, he cries recounting how her mind turned to dust when she was locked up. In an act of pure despair, the noble grabs the tutor, begging him to prevent her exile to the monastery. In tears, the poor guy begs for God's sake for the mage to teach at least a spark of magic. With a raised hand, our protagonist asks for a timeout and puts the pieces together amidst so much drama. Looking at the dirty edges of the notebooks, the kid realizes the spoiled young woman never stopped trying to learn. To confirm the theory, the brother reveals all the books are about heavy theory for powerful rich folks. Face to face with the broken canvases, the boy understands the student's blocking trauma. After slamming the magic book shut, he finds the right piece in the puzzle. Right to the desperate cry of his face, Derek announces he has the perfect solution in mind. In the middle of a pleasant sleep, the spoiled girl gets hit with a splash of freezing water to the face. Completely terrified and soaked, the little blonde gets up letting out a scream capable of shattering glass. With the wet bucket in his hands, the fake tutor warns that the time for drooling sleep is over. Chilled to the bone, the spoiled girl questions if the bum finally lost his mind completely. With a brutal pincer grip, Derek drags her by the arm without an ounce of gentleness. Tossed aside through the corridors, the girl kicks an anger, embarrassing herself in front of the butlers. Heading towards the rich mansion's backyard, our protagonist doesn't care if the prisoner trips over her own feet. Without the slightest mercy, he throws the spoiled girl into the dark bushes near the wild forest. Dirty from head to toe, the rich girl demands answers on who he thinks he is to try and educate a goddess. Crouching with deadly boredom, the boy endures the crazy girl's hysteria, rolling his sleepy eyes. With a devilish smile ripping across his cheek, he admits he has zero plans to teach real magic. Frozen by absolute terror, the Harris hears from the madman's mouth that his only fun is beating up arrogant nobles. Agreeing with the absurdity, the kid claims the tutor story was pure excuse. With a scary smile, he reveals he just wanted a chance to beat up arrogant rich kids. Drawing the sword from the scabbard, the kid asks if the blonde knows how beautiful a noble scream is. Terrified by the threat, the spoiled girl tries to pull rank, asking if he will get away unpunished. Pointing the blade, the mercenary mocks, saying no one would believe a crazy girl on her way to the monastery. Ready for the worst, the young man jokes that a commoner's life is worth nothing and death solves any mistake. But if he wanted to run, he would disappear off the map and even do a favor by ridding the family of their worst headache. In that instant, the spoiled girl finally realizes the danger and jumps up, sure she will be eliminated. Bolting toward the dark forest, the girl runs for her life, escaping from the maniac. Calculating the escape route, the young woman decides to lose the assassin among the trees instead of the open field. Confident on her own turf, the little blonde plans to return home and order the cocky commander's execution. Suddenly, a scary flash lights up the girl's back, interrupting her vengeful thoughts. Gigantic and lethal, a fireball starts to form, glowing brightly in the mage's hand. Acting without mercy, the fake tutor casts the deadly spell toward the girl. Shocked by the power, the Harris recognizes the advanced technique and panics. Understanding nothing, the Harris wonders how Bum masters two-star magic. Cutting the air, the sphere of flames tears through the night, ready to torch the target. With a deafening roar, the attack explodes right next to the girl, throwing her to the ground. Trembling from head to toe, the spoiled girl swallows dryly upon seeing the size of the crater in the brush. Smiling like a true villain, our protagonist mocks her, saying he missed his aim by accident. High in the sky, the full moon illuminates the relentless pursuit in the forest. Panting and sweaty, the girl continues her desperate run, stumbling over rocks. Tripping awkwardly, the noble falls face first into the dirt, totally losing her posture. Tearing through the darkness, an ice arrow whizzes by, almost taking the blonde's head off. Frozen with fear, the Harris stares at the stake lodged millimeters from her fragile body. Walking slowly, the mercenary praises the agility of the girl who always lived locked in the annex. Gathering her last ounces of strength, the little blonde gets up quickly and starts running like crazy again among the trunks. Hopeless, she cries mentally, knowing she won't be able to shake off that monster for much longer. With his hand glowing on the ground, the tracking mage follows the priest's footsteps easily. Silently, he observes the escape trail, evaluating his student's physical limit. As expected, the kid realizes that forest is exactly the place painted in the pictures. Pure magic flowed from the girl's hands, drawing the energy of nature on the canvases without realizing it. Faced with this revelation, our hero finally confirms his genius theory. Tired of running, the noble suddenly turns in a fit of fury, throwing a heavy rock at the enemy. Defending the strike, the mage barely moves and shatters the rock in midair with pure magical pressure. Praising her courage, the young man admits that swapping escape for a direct attack was a bold choice. Exhausted on the ground, the spoiled girl tries to pull breath into her lungs, but her body has already given up fighting. Coldly, The mercenary decrees the little one's energies have reached their absolute limit. Preparing the finishing blow, he raises the illuminated sword, asking for the condemned's last words. Letting out a dry laugh, the girl gives up on life, accepting her fate with her head down. But instead of crying, the spoiled girl challenges the assassin and tells him to get the job done already. Curious about the attitude, the kid asks where this sick obsession with noble lineage comes from. With a choked voice, the heiress vents that without pure blood, there would be absolutely nothing left. Scratching the dirt in hatred, she screams desperately, cursing her own failure with mana. Crying out of frustration, the little blonde yells, asking if they think she never tried in life. In tears, the noble confesses she tried everything but always failed in magic and the arts. Without her royalty status, the girl feels she is just trash in the world and breaks down. Sad about the humiliation, she slumps against the ground, expecting the fatal cut on her neck. Holding the grip tightly, the mercenary raises the blade, ready to slice the target. Announcing he heard the complaints, the tutor charges mercilessly at the crying prey. With her eyes closed, the spoiled little girl just awaits the end of her useless journey. Striking the ground brutally, the blade raises a spectacular curtain of ice, illuminating everything. Suddenly, the girl opens her eyes, realizing her head is still attached to her body. Looking around, the blonde sees herself surrounded by a beautiful manifestation of ice stakes. Staring at her own glowing hands, she hears the kid praise her hidden talent. Bowing his body, our protagonist apologizes for the psychological torture while the girl reacts in shock. Gently, the teacher explains she performed a raw, high-level manifestation of mana. Tears keep falling from the spoiled girl's face, but this time they are of pure relief. Breaking down in tears, the noble releases all the pressure she kept in her chest for years on end. After much shouting, the mage finally reveals her strength comes from the wild school. Bandaging the student's leg, he explains that nobles force learning always in the disciplined school. Forcing the natural gift with the preppy theory only blocked the wild heiress's evolution. Curious about the diagnosis, the little blonde wants to know how the commoner uncovered her talents so quickly. Pointing out the facts, the boy says he figured out the gift upon noticing the paintings full of life in her room. To make it clear, he warns that wild mages easily connect with ambient mana from childhood. Completely shocked, the girl processes the truths that destroyed the lies in her head. Finishing the bandage on her shin, our hero declares the young woman can already walk without pain. With his back to the fancy lady, the mercenary warns that real training will begin as soon as the sun comes up. Breaking the deadly silence, the blonde calls her new master's name with maximum respect in her words. Red with embarrassment, the spoiled girl finally throws her arrogance in the trash and thanks him for the support. Cowling the girl for the return journey, the kid walks ahead while the noble agrees and runs after him. But midway along the path, the mage praises that incomplete painting, wanting to know if it was her favorite. Confused by the question, the heiress confesses proudly that he is the first to notice the abandoned art. By the following dawn, the student wakes up in her own bed, super eager to learn new spells. Small beams of natural mana appear glowing on the girl's fingers, proving her true gift has just blossomed. Frustrated with the lack of control, the little blonde realizes the magic isn't flowing well. Walking down the hall, the maid carries a heavy bucket of water. Upon opening the bedroom door, the servant gets a huge scare, bumping right into the boss. In a clumsy stumble, the water from the bucket spills all over the fancy rug. Desperate about the mistake, the maid begs for forgiveness, expecting the worst. Cold as ice, the noble stares at the employee with a dark look. Trembling with fear, the woman cowers on the floor, awaiting the violent punishment. Surprising everyone, the heiress just tells the maid to be careful and walks away. Confused and relieved, the maid doesn't understand how she escaped a certain beating. Whispering in the corners, the other servants are shocked by the girl's peaceful attitude. Straight to the tutor's room, the scene shows our protagonist snoring heavily in bed. With aggressive knocks on the wood, the spoiled girl wakes the mage with screams. Rubbing his sleepy eyes, the boy answers the door without understanding the despair. Bossy as always, the girl demands to learn to control the new mana immediately. Shocked by the gossip, the old butler widens his eyes upon discovering the useless girl awakened magic. Unstoppable in her stubbornness, the blonde orders the teacher to teach the spell right now. Shutting the door in her face, the mercenary tells her to come back only in the afternoon. Crying rivers of emotion, the butler celebrates the miracle while the girl ignores the old man. Punching the wood in anger, the fancy lady shouts, demanding the bum open the lock. Furious with the yelling, our hero curses the crazy student from under the covers. Outside the mansion, the sun shines brightly, illuminating the new day in the duchy. Sweeping the floor, the maids gossip that the boss didn't break a single plate at breakfast. Crossing the hall, the brother Reg overhears the rumors about his sister's magic. Indignant with the story, the young man stops the maids and demands explanations. Focused on his work, the Grand Duke signs his documents peacefully in the office. Interrupting the service, Reg enters the room wanting to confirm the youngest's magical awakening. With a smirk, the family leader finds the news a great relief. Upset, the dark-haired one tries to diminish the achievement, saying it's early to celebrate. Defending his little sister, the blonde Valerian counters, stating she deserves all the praise. Full of hate, Reg warns that this little trick doesn't erase the shames of the past. Giving no credit to his son's fight, the old noble continues his work in silence. Slumped on her bedroom floor, the pouting student hugs her knees, making a face. Curious about the drama, the tutor asks if the fancy lady is throwing a tantrum. Turning her face, the spoiled girl denies the sadness and claims to be dying of anger. Scratching his head, the mage warns that acting with resentment won't speed up training. Yelling again, the girl insists it's not a tantrum but pure hatred. With the patience of a monk, Derek explains magic requires taking one step at a time. Jumping with anger, the heiress raises her voice, wanting to prove she is an adult. Staring at the crazy girl with a face of boredom, the mercenary doesn't even blink at the outburst. Defeated by the silence, the little blonde sits down again and accepts the crybaby reputation. Straight to the point, the teacher warns that using magic without control can cause serious accidents. Tired of stalling, he orders the student to focus on theory books and rest her body. Annoyed by the complaints, the young man threatens to teach in a very unconventional way. Releasing a killer aura, the boy scares the noble with memories of the beating in the forest. Sweating cold, the girl backs off instantly and agrees to read the books without a peep. During the practical lesson, the mage teaches how to freely manifest energy through the hands. Explaining the wild school system, he says freedom surpasses any rigid rule. Sincere in his words, our hero admits the noble style perfectly matches this loose approach. Reinforcing the praise, he mentions the girl's blood overflows with pure talent. Red as a pepper, the spoiled girl gets all jitty with the master's recognition. Full of attitude, she immediately asks if that means she's a magic genius. Bursting her bubble right away, the kid explains that talent and genius are very different things. Hidden in the garden, the envious brother spies on the youngest's evolution with an unfriendly face. With the dawn of a new day, the luxurious mansion prepares for another routine. Happy with life, the girl shows she got the direction of the magical manifestation right. Before the tutor, the fancy lady tries to freeze objects and demands the young man's attention. On another day of training, she complains that the feeling of mana is very weird. Upset at the teacher's disappearance, the blonde finds Derek reading a book under the tree. Yelling with hands on her hips, she accuses the mercenary of slacking off in the middle of his shift. Flipping the pages, the kid warns that the Duke lent the grimoires exactly for him to study. With no patience for excuses, the heiress pulls the mage by the arm demanding he evaluate her magic. Entering a dark hall, our protagonist finds the blonde brother staring out the large window. Turning around, Valerian greets the mercenary and asks him to sit on the couch. Serving some tea, the knight casually asks about the youngest's progress. Sincere as always, Derek answers she improved a lot but one-star magic will take a while. Thoughtful about the deadline, the noble warns their mother will return from her trip next week. With a warning tone, the big guy cautions that the matriarch hates commoners and accepts no failures. Aware of the danger, the boy says he already imagined the old rich lady's prejudice. Changing the subject, Valerian gives a speech about being the future leader and needing to embrace the whole family. Sighing in frustration, the knight confesses the human mind is a maze that's too complicated. Tired of philosophizing, the tutor just asks what the preppy guy really wants. Almost crying, the big blonde complains that Diella doesn't want to play with him anymore. Remembering the past, the young man praises the angelic smile his little sister had in childhood. In an act of pure despair, Valerian begs for tips on how to win back the youngest heart. Far away from there, the fancy lady herself yells through the halls hunting for the runaway teacher. Excited about his creation, the big guy shows a scary doll made by himself. Curious for the mage's opinion, he asks if the plush toy doesn't look exactly like his little sister. With a look of pure boredom, the tutor shoots back, asking if the knight is trying to curse someone. Totally disappointed, the blonde cries his tears, saying the mercenary doesn't have an ounce of sensitivity. Changing the scene, the Grand Duchy's mansion prepares to welcome an important guest. In front of the bowing staff, the new figure praises the famous magic teacher. Satisfied with the choice, she comments the duchy finally found someone capable for the position. Introducing herself as Mariella, the family's matriarch even offers luxurious gifts from her lands. Maintaining respect, our protagonist refuses the offer and warns he has no affiliation with any noble house. Not quite understanding, the fancy lady blinks, confused by such a direct refusal. Straight and direct, the kid drops the bomb, revealing he is just a random commoner. In a complete state of shock, the woman widens her eyes, feeling pure disgust for the lower class. Going back a week in time, the scene shows the exact moment the eldest sister left. Near the carriage, Iceland breathes a sigh of relief, believing she made the best choice by hiring the boy. Needing to stay in the city of Ebelstein, the noble entrusts her youngest sister's future to the mage's hands. Calm about the mission, the hero accepts the responsibility without showing any concern. Worried about his lack of manners, the mercenary boss scolds the kid for being so blunt. Rushing the trip, the man warns they need to get out of there before problems increase. With the carriage already rolling, the trip back to the city finally begins. Suddenly, the noble girl claps her hands, remembering a crucial detail she forgot to mention. Worried, she warns her mother is scheduled to return to the mansion the following week. Curious about the desperate tone, the mercenary leader asks if this lady is really that dangerous. Trying to find the right words, the young woman swallows hard, describing the matriarch's explosive temper. Back in the present, the true incarnation of fury screams at the top of her lungs inside the office. Asking for a little calm, the Grand Duke tries to control his furious wife's yells. Banging on the table with force, the woman rants indignantly about the absurdity of putting a commoner to teach the youngest. Maintaining his posture, the patriarch admits he also hates depending on lower-class people. However, reality knocks, as all pure blood teachers have given up on the problem girl. Justifying the hire, the old man recalls the white-haired boy was a direct recommendation from their eldest daughter. Outraged by the excuses, the matriarch insists there must be a minimum quality standard for tutors. Blinded by anger, the woman suggests calling someone named Flam to take the brunt of the magical education. Skeptical of the idea, the husband asks if she thinks it's normal to pull the army commander just to give little lessons. In an even louder tone, the fancy lady shouts that high society can't become a mess without rules. Focused on appearances, she argues the girl's reputation will be destroyed if she hangs around with a nameless bum. Suddenly, the large office doors swing open with a crash, interrupting the couple's fight. Inside the hall, the blonde knight asks his mother to take a deep breath and lower her guard. Cutting her son off, the matriarch decrees this dirty mistake won't go unpunished at all. Right behind his brother, the young rake agrees with their mother, adding heavy fuel to the fire. Surprised by the attitude, Valerian notices the bad intentions behind the cynical smile. With slow steps, the dark-haired one lectures at a commoner giving orders to nobility breaks the whole hierarchy. Full of ulterior motives, he proposes testing the mercenary strength in one-on-one combat. Loyal to his hire, the Grand Duke shuts down the circus, guaranteeing the kid is a monster in magic. In a quick detour, the envious brother then suggests testing Yahello herself to prove it's a farce. Smiling maliciously, he plans a magical duel against his youngest sister to expose the training. Furious with the cowardice, Valerian speaks his mind and calls his brother out for a fight. Completely shocked, the blonde demands explanations for this sadistic desire to beat up their own sister. Without remorse, the dark-haired one throws the question back, asking if his brother has already forgotten the girl's past crimes. In a desperate plea, the knight reminds him she is blood of their blood and deserves to be protected. Full of mockery, Rage spits on the word blood, showing he has no pity at all for the youngest. Shouting, he states the girl's mistakes will sink their family name straight into society's mud. Sad about his relative's coldness, the big guy can barely believe what he just heard. Ignoring the drama, the dark-haired one decrees it was Yahello herself who crossed the line first. Cold and calculating, he concludes the spoiled girl's place is rotting locked inside that annex for the rest of her life. Ready to attack, the hare leaves the office already planning the student's public destruction. Far from all this confusion, a little bird sings peacefully on the isolated annex's window. But the peace doesn't last long, as the door flies open and the little blonde comes in screaming the tutor's name. With the book closed, the boy asks full of boredom what the reason for the scandal is so early in the day. Calmly, he places the grimoire on the table ready to hear the cocky student's complaints. Terrified of her fate, the noble warns that if she loses the magic tournament, the mercenary will be kicked out of the mansion. Staring at a random paper, the protagonist confirms the opponent is already at a 1-star level, complicating everything. Crazy with anger at the teacher's passivity, the girl yells, reminding him his job is on the line. Cleaning his ear, our hero reminds the girl that mercenary life is simple and without emotional attachments. Sincere in his words, he says the fat payment already hit his account, so there's no reason to cry. Paralyzed by the cold answer, the hares can't believe the tutors simply flip the "I don't care" switch. A whole week of pure training passes, the duchy's flags wave announcing the day of the great duel. In the main courtyard, a gigantic arena awaits the competitors with stands packed with curious nobles. Walking with authority, the family leader arrives at the event to watch the combat from the VIP box. Surprised to see the mercenary on the edge of the arena, the patriarch starts a conversation with a smirk. Straight as an arrow, the boy says he doesn't feel a drop of nervousness about the situation. Sitting on his throne, the Grand Duke mentally praises the absurd coldness the commoner carries in his eyes. On the other side of the arena, Brother Rage stretches his body ready to begin the public humiliation. With his cape fluttering, he swears he'll make the youngest bitterly regret all her mistakes. Suddenly, a flashback shows the spoiled girl covered in a red hood with a look of pure terror. Desperate, she pleaded with the teacher, asking if he'd really abandon her to the lion's den. Maintaining his posture, the boy warned she wouldn't use advanced magic now, but victory would be guaranteed at the right time. Back in the past, the tutor reminds the girl she was born with the pure blood of the Duplains. Without mincing words, he reinforces that the wild school relies entirely on solitary study. Revolted by the revelation, the spoiled girl starts yelling, asking why they're having this conversation now. With her head down, the blonde swallows her pride and admits she's not an exemplary student. Bathed in tears, the girl begs to continue learning magic merely with the mercenary. Faced with the drama, the white-haired boy just listens in complete silence. With a deep sigh, the protagonist confesses he knows absolutely nothing about the rules of high society duels. But with a sharp look, he guarantees he can teach the student to win any combat. Already in the arena, gossip runs wild among the nobles, doubting the girl's magical capability. In the shadows of the past, little Yahello suffered under the weight of her family's name. Judged by everyone, the girl was always compared to her older siblings' absurd talent. Returning to focus, the fancy lady wipes her tears and accepts the brutal training to win. With firm steps, the youngest enters the battlefield wearing a flashy red hood. Watching from afar, the teacher knows the girl isn't there to play house. Focused on her goal, the young woman stares at her brother not as family, but as a true mage ready for war. High on the mast, the duchy's flag signals the beginning of the family confrontation. Face to face in the arena, the siblings stare at each other in an atmosphere of pure tension. With a dry clearing of his throat, the referee calls the attention of the entire audience. To explain the rules, the old man says a magical shield will protect fighters from lethal attacks. Full of attitude, the older brother announces the playtime is about to begin. Keeping an eye on the necklace, Derek realizes the item nullifies heavy damage and triggers an instant defeat. Aware of the 10-minute limit, the mercenary figures out the preppy guy wants to end the fight fast. Wasting no time, Ray conjures a storm of wind spells around himself. Ready to attack, the dark-haired one prepares a devastating blow against the youngest. In a mocking tone, the big guy offers cynical apologies and tells her to go back to her dark room. In a quick move, he fires the cutting magic straight towards the spoiled girl. Like sharp razors, the air currents advance ready to destroy the girl. In an impressive reflex, the blonde dodges the attack by throwing her body to the side. Shocked by her speed, the noble swallows hard, unable to believe what he just saw. Caught by surprise, Ray has to jump back, escaping a sudden freezing attack. Fast as lightning, the young woman dodges the spells with absurd ease. Attentive to her movements, the teacher notices she wastes lots of mana, forcing her trajectory out of pure lack of experience. With a loud crash, a colossal ice wall blocks the brothers' advance. Through pure magic, the girl raises the frozen defense in the arena. Full of arrogance, the dark-haired guy thinks his sister only knows cheap tricks. With more wind in his hands, Ray promises to shatter the ice using brute force. In a tone of challenge, the preppy guy tells her to try and block the furious new strike. At that moment, the tutor's voice echoes in the girl's mind, warning that mercenaries don't fight fair. Sincere in his words, the protagonist warned that a dirty victory might bring criticism from the nobility. Worried about her image, the boy asked if the spoiled girl could handle the pressure. With a devilish smile, the hares confirmed she couldn't care less about the rich folks' opinions. Thanks to the smooth ice, the mage glides like a rocket, escaping the attacks. Focused purely on victory, the girl proves she absorbed the street tactics well. Maintaining her sharp gaze, the little blonde gives the enemy no breaks to breathe. Taking icy shortcuts, she gains speed and dominates the combat space. True to her training, the girl uses the terrain itself to her advantage to corner the opponent. Crouching low, she dodges another wind blade goes grazing by. With a brutal impact, the enemy attack causes real chaos, shattering the ice on the platform. To avoid the blow, the fancy lady tries to maintain a safe distance from her furious brother. Believing he won the duel, Ray breaks into a victorious smile, declaring the fight is over. With a massive spell, the noble hits the exact spot where his sister was. After the massive explosion, a thick dust cloud scares the entire audience present. Intact and serene, our hero watches the show without moving a single muscle on his face. Desperate with the scene, the matriarch screams her daughter's name, jumping from her seat. In tears, the woman commands the butler to halt the duel, swearing the youngest is hurt. Having no patience for a show, the Grand Duke tells his wife to shut her mouth and sit, because the fight continues. Confused and revolted, the old fancy lady insists the girl took a direct hit. With a simple gesture, the patriarch points out the magic protection hasn't activated. Intrigued by the kid, the Duke notices the educator already counted on this twist. Amidst the dust, Ray stares into the empty arena, understanding nothing of what happened. Confused about her disappearance, the brother wonders how the shield didn't activate and where the brat ran off to. Suddenly, a strange noise draws the noble's attention below his feet. Taking him completely by surprise, a giant ice spear attacks the young man, ripping through the wood. Completely shocked, the preppy guy curses the cowardly strike coming right from the arena floor. Quick on his feet, he deduces that leaving the platform would result in automatic elimination. Gripped by nervousness, the dark-haired one realizes being under the arena might not be considered an out-of-bounds area. Facing the crater in the floor, the young man notices his sister's genius and deadly trap. Leaving no time to think, several ice stakes begin to pierce the entire platform. In a desperate leap, the hare dodges imminent doom while the floor is destroyed. Completely cornered, the young man admits landing a blow on the girl will be almost impossible now. High above the arena, he floats with his wind magic, trying to escape the shower of spikes. Furious at her rat tactics, the noble screams the youngest name, demanding a fair fight. In the darkness below, the girl stares at her brother with her eyes glowing with pure killer instinct. Scared by her expression, the young man recognizes that same calm and dark look of the mercenary. Face to face with danger, Ray accepts that fight has not an ounce of royal etiquette. Furious with the dirty tactic, the noble accuses the tutor of having planned all this cowardice. By a hair, the dark-haired one lands on the ice pillars to avoid falling into the trap. With an expression of pure hatred, he decides to enter the opponent's survival game. Away from the hole, the young man uses his wind magic to keep himself safe and floating. Terrified by the scene, the matriarch panics seeing her daughter hiding in the dust. Maintaining total coldness, the Grand Duke tells his wife to calm down because no rules were broken. Focused in the dark, the girl uses her new senses to track the prey. Through her deep connection with nature, she clearly sees the opponent's mana flow. Ready for the attack, the hare begins reciting an absurd magical chant. Suddenly, new ice stakes sprout from the ground, destroying the young man's concentration. Irritated by the constant interruption, he realizes he can't cast heavy attacks. Suspended in the highest part of the arena, the noble tries to find a safe angle to retaliate. As soon as the brat stops attacking, the dark-haired one deduces a new ambush is ready. About to strike the fatal blow, the preppy guy swears he's gonna crush the youngest with the next spell. Keeping an eye on the imminent blunder, the old butler sighs disappointed with the hare's tactic. Up there, the preppy blindly believes he escaped his little sister's reach. Calculating the long distance, the arrogant man accepts that the position prevents long chance. Wasting not a single second, he focuses all his raw energy directly into the palm of his hand. In an act of pure madness, the young man decides to blow up the entire structure once and for all. Shocked by the level of brutality of her own son, the mother widens her eyes in despair. Caught completely by surprise, the preppy guy sees the little mage jump out of hiding. Like a rocket, the spoiled girl fires a deadly ice arrow straight into the enemy's face. With blood in her eyes, the little blonde shows she didn't enter the arena to play nice. Certain of victory, the dark-haired one advances with full force, aiming for a head-on clash to end the fight. Acting like a true street thug, the noble kicks dirt straight into the preppy guy's eyes. Blinded by the dirty earth, the young man coughs uncontrollably and completely loses the direction of his flight. Taking advantage of the perfect opening, the girl swings the frozen blade, aiming for a clean cut. Feeling the violent impact, the older brother groans in pain as he blocks the strike. Falling hard backwards, the preppy curses the brat with all the strength of his lungs. With deadly hate in his eyes, he deduces the girl is fighting dirty because she has no mana left at all. Staring at his sister from afar, the young man finally understands this duel is worth her entire honor. Promising not to go easy, he swears he will return the attack with double the power and no mercy. Totally drained, the youngest slumps to her knees on the platform's destroyed wood. In a comforting memory of training, the mercenary compares elemental magics to a painting. Using simple metaphors, the teacher taught that raw mana is just the paint of a picture. Demonstrating the technique in practice, the tutor asks her to gather the energy like someone holding a brush. With an inspiring and calm tone, the white-haired young man teaches the true essence of sorcery. Training harder to the starry sky, the girl repeats the same movements thousands of times. Repeating the mantra out loud, the little noble connects deeply with the invisible forces. With the power flowing from her fingertips, the blonde reaches an intimidating spiritual trance. Determined not to be trash, the girl gathers her last drops of strength for the final spell. With her pupils glowing in a magical blue tone, she prepares to release her lethal masterpiece. Radiating an overwhelming light, the youngest summons a gigantic circle right beneath her feet. Shocked by the monstrous size of the spell, the butler chokes, unable to believe that gift. Terrified in the VP box, the matriarch stammers, realizing the isolated girl is using one-star power. Worried about the imminent carnage, the preppy guy notices the creation of a lethal ice spear. Holding the solid frozen pillar, the wild mage doesn't spare even 1% of her power. Acting driven by instinct, the desperate brother also fires his best wind storm. Believing in his own speed, the noble advances, promising to arrive before the cold blast. Planning a dirty knockout, he decides to smash the girl up close before she drops the bomb. With an impeccable movement, the youngest launches the frozen comet, tearing through the atmosphere. Almost in the exact same millisecond, the preppy guy releases the arrows of cutting air with fury. Desperate about the blood that will be shed, the old woman screams, tearing her vocal cords. A deafening and colossal crash shakes the entire foundation of the castle, kicking up a thick cloud. In a silent memory from the previous year, baby birds rest safely in their nest. Slithering through the green branches, a deadly serpent approaches the little birds quietly. Focused entirely on the duchy's politics, the patriarch receives confidential letters in the morning. Reading the cruel words on the papers, the head of the house decides the nobility's future with the tip of his quill. Shrouded in the office's gloomy shadows, the boss imposes his sentence on those who get in the way. In deadly silence, the Grand Duke accepts that painful sacrifices are necessary for power. In the middle of the arena's smoke curtain, the little blonde's protective shield emits a faint glow. Noticing the rescue spell triggered, the noble quickly understands she was eliminated from the competition. On the other side of the potholed platform, the brother breathes a sigh of relief next to the spear that narrowly missed splitting him. Showing no disappointment, the tutor listens as the brat lowers her head and admits defeat. Crumbling with sadness, the little heiress cries, letting out a heart-wrenching wail. With a completely serene look, the patriarch watches his daughter's emotional breakdown. Irritated by the lack of class in the battle, the fancy lady scolds her husband for the public embarrassment. Stomping her feet non-stop, the girl refuses to accept losing after giving her own soul in training. Despising the outcome won with street tactics, the old noble swears to kill the tutor who taught that. Remembering times of carnage, the duke brings up a furious warrior from the old guard. Staring at the flames in the former soldier's eyes, the father compared that soldier to a thirsty lion. Proud to carry such expectation, the knight accepted the deadly mission with an open chest. Turning his memories back to the arena, the old man mentally praises the girl's fresh, wild instinct. Running as fast as they can, the nannies invade the platform to wipe the youngest's nose. Surrounding the loser, the numerous maids collapse in relief that she is alive after facing death. Terrified by the girl's condition, the maid warns she needs immediate medical treatment. Awkward about the situation, the older brother doesn't quite know what to say. Trying to break the ice, the preppy kid praises the youngest effort in the battle. Accompanied by the maids, the spoiled girl is taken back to the family's quarters. Stopping midway, the little blonde turns her head looking for someone specific. Finding the tutor sitting on the garden bench, she walks slowly toward him. Breaking down in tears, the little noble can't hide the pain of defeat. Gripping her cloak tightly, the girl confesses out loud that she lost the duel. Sobbing heavily, the spoiled girl apologizes for having disappointed the master. Calm about the result, our protagonist simply says it's alright. Placing a hand on the student's shoulder, he assures her he doesn't mind the loss either. With a sincere smile, the mage advises the young woman to overcome this frustration to grow stronger. Opening the floodgates completely, the heiress cries her eyes out in front of the mercenary. Shocked by the scene, the maids call for their boss, not knowing how to react. Stomping hard on the ground, the family's matriarch advances with an unfriendly face. Shouting her daughter's name, the old fancy lady runs to aid the injured youngest. Hugging the girl tightly, the woman cries, saying the child suffered too much. Caressing the little blonde's face, the mother orders the maids to fetch urgent treatment. Still in the matriarch's arms, the spoiled girl nods but keeps staring at the teacher. Right after handing the daughter to the maids, the lady dries her tears. Wiping her face with a handkerchief, she glares at our hero with a killer look. Calm as always, the white-haired boy merely returns the stare without blinking. Furious, the old noble calls the commoner vulgar trash and asks if he has any idea what he did. Slightly surprised, the tutor listens to the totally unnecessary scolding in silence. Shouting, the woman accuses the young men of teaching dirty tricks and staining royalty's honor. Showing no fear, the kid simply endures the rich lady's lecture. Demanding respect, the matriarch decrees there is an elegance the lower class would never understand. Interrupting the madness, the Grand Duke appears, asking if his wife didn't watch the duel properly. Startled by the intervention, the fancy lady turns her face, not understanding her husband's defense. Serious and imposing, the patriarch states the only person acting without class there is his own wife. Completely lost, the old woman questions why she's getting this scolding. Firm in his decision, the old man reminds her that despite being a commoner, the boy is their daughter's master. With his head held low, our protagonist just listens to his employer's defense. Apologizing for his wife, the family leader says every mother protects her offspring in her own way. Reassuring the boss, the mage accepts the invitation for a private chat in the office. Leaving the fancy lady foaming with anger, the two turn their backs and walk down the halls. Outraged by the humiliation, the matriarch puts a hand to her face, trembling with hatred. Once inside the luxurious room, the sound of the pen dipping into ink breaks the silence. Sitting at his desk, the noble praises the tutor's work and offers a fair reward. Straight to the point, the rich man asks if the boy desires a 3-star spell as a prize. Widening his eyes mentally, the mercenary celebrates having hit the bullseye on what he wanted. Evaluating the scenario, the old man warns that surviving in high society requires more advanced magic. With a deep voice, the patriarch explains his daughter no longer needs a basic teacher, but rather a real master. While signing some papers, the boss makes the atmosphere in the room even heavier. Without mincing words, the Duke reveals he knows the kid harbors an ambition dangerous for a commoner. Warning of the risks, the old man says he forgives this audacity only because of the boy's talent. Serious and focused, our hero processes the advice without bowing to the rich man. Finishing signing the document, the noble admits his hunger for power makes the young man scary. Sensing the mage's intentions, the leader states he was already planning to leave the mansion. However, the old man demands the mercenary continue teaching the youngest for a little longer. Fascinated by the opportunity, the protagonist knows this is the absolute maximum limit allowed for someone of his class. Repeating the tempting offer, the old man waits for the white-haired teacher's confirmation. With his red eyes gleaming with desire, the kid accepts the offer without thinking twice. Being guided through the mansion, the giant doors open, revealing an illuminated hall. Stepping on the red carpet, the boy enters the Duplain family's famous secret library. Pulling a heavy book from the shelf, the young man analyzes the cover carefully. Flipping through the ancient pages, our protagonist devours the magical knowledge with his eyes. Totally amazed, the young man lets out an impressed sigh at the rich content. Admiring the gigantic bookshelves, he reflects that many people die trying to find just one such book. Holding the grimoire, the kid realizes that place is stuffed with 3-star spells. With a contained smile, the mercenary concludes he now has a perfect reason to extend his stay at the mansion. Remembering his blonde friend at the tavern, he imagines the fuss she would make if she knew this. A few days later, the sun shines brightly in the blue sky, marking the start of a new training session. With hands on her hips, the spoiled girl puffs out her chest full of pride at her own evolution. Sporting a giant smile, the girl states she can finally be called a 1-star mage. Showing no excitement, the tutor simply ignores the conceited student's pose. Annoyed with the master's coldness, the little blonde crosses her arms, complaining he is not easy to please at all. Provoking the fancy lady, the boy mentions the absurd crying fit she threw on the day of the tournament. Red with embarrassment, the spoiled girl invents the classic excuse that dust got in her eye. Pouting, the girl grumbles that her father should have warned her beforehand that they wouldn't be expelled. Cutting the small talk, the teacher announces it's time to start the real lesson. Surprised by the master's words, the heiress focuses on the part where he said she evolves fast. With patience, the mage explains that casting 1-star spells so early is very rare for the newly awakened. Excited by the praises, the little one begins listing attack spells she wants to learn right away. Throwing a bucket of cold water, our protagonist bursts her bubble and announces they will only practice basic mana manifestation. Confused by the change of plans, the spoiled girl questions why she won't learn one-star spells right off the bat. Straight and direct, the tutor answers that the basic fundamentals of magic are far more important. Defeated by logic, the little blonde lowers her head and accepts the boring training, leaving the teacher surprised. With a pout on her face, the spoiled girl complains she got excited for nothing, thinking she would cast grand magics. Curious about the master's silence, she asks if there's any dirt on her face. Calm as always, our protagonist says he was just shocked to see the student so obedient. Red with anger, the girl crosses her arms and swears she respected the young man since day one. At that moment, a wet memory comes to the mercenary's mind, recalling the bucket of dirty water. Unforgiving of the lie, the boy throws in her face that she soaked his head with sewer water twice. Full of shame, the fancy lady turns her face away, complaining about the teacher's grudge. To mask the awkwardness, the heiress forces a laugh praising the weather and runs away to practice manifestation. With a drop of sweat running down, the mage merely watches his pupil's clumsy escape. Under a starry sky, the luxurious mansion sleeps while heavy training continues in the backyard. Totally exhausted, the little noble breathes deeply, trying to keep her posture in the dark. Warning that things will get worse, the tutor cautions that the spoiled girl's schedule will be packed very soon. Sitting on the ground, the blonde grumbles about the new gossip while the mage grieves. Irritated with her own mother, the youngest complains she'll be forced to start etiquette classes next week. Thinking it's a great idea, the kid comments that noble education perfectly matches the new spells. Making a face of disgust, the girl lists the boredom of geography and sewing classes, not understanding how her sister endured it all. Defending the eldest, the teacher reminds her that A's line is that family's great untouchable flower. Wanting to learn only magic, the girl hears from the master that they have the Grand Duke's full support to focus on training. Thoughtful about the situation, the white-haired boy wonders who would have the courage to fire him now. Sincere in her words, the fancy lady agrees the father supports the duo, but warns the mother won't let it slide. Curious about the unprovoked hatred, the young man tries to understand why the matriarch wants to kick him out of the mansion. Explaining the old woman's side, the noble says learning from a mercenary destroys the high class's dignity. Realizing the problem, our hero looks at the student from the corner of his eye while hatching a perfect plan. Taking charge of the situation, he announces that shutting the matriarch's mouth will be the easiest thing in the world, they just need to remove her justification. Totally surprised, the spoiled girl blinks, confused by her master's absurd confidence. The very next day, the family's huge estate shines under the intense morning sun. Walking through the wide corridors, the scowling matriarch parades with her maids right behind. Consumed by worry, the old woman pictures the mercenary with a bloodthirsty villain face influencing her daughter. In the fancy lady's crazy mind, the tutor would teach the youngest to tie up and torture people in the basement. Full of dread, the mother visualizes her own daughter acting like a brutal thug amidst high society. With a hand to her head, the woman feels a migraine just thinking about this public disaster. Firm in her role as the lady of the house, the old woman swears she won't accept this dirty commoner, even with her husband's approval. Promising to fix the situation, the older woman hears the sudden noise of the large door opening. Like a true fairy tale princess, little Dial appears stunningly, calling for her mother. Completely in shock, the matriarch sees her problem child glowing with an aura of pure elegance. Smiling emotionally, the old woman feels her heart melt at the perfection of that adorable child. Suddenly, she blinks, coming back to reality without understanding what happened. Holding her dress impeccably, the youngest wishes her mother a good morning with an angelic voice. Speechless, the older fancy lady just stammers, confused by the sudden politeness. In a sweet and polite tone, the girl explains she hasn't left her room because of the injuries and apologizes for her absence. Trembling slightly, the matriarch can barely formulate a complete sentence in the face of so much class. Saying goodbye like a perfect lady, the little one notes she needs to go to her piano lesson. Still anesthetized by the etiquette show, the old noble stammers, asking about the girl's new classes. Inspired by her older sister, the little blonde smiles and says she is super excited to start her studies next week. Sweating cold, the lady just agrees and tells her daughter to run, so she won't be late for her appointment. Doing an impeccable curtsy, the spoiled girl draws sighs from all the servants present in the courtyard. Desperate about the scene, a maid runs up asking the young lady not to strain her battle-wounded body. Startled by the boss's posture, the employee stammers the heiress's name in a complete state of shock. With light and graceful steps, our perfect student parades through the castle, proving the tutor's plan was an absolute success.